Hello everyone, good evening. Sharing my screen, guys. Just give me one moment. So we were building journal import service in a previous session. So I'll pick it up from where we have left off. So we plugged in all the logic, guys. So we just need to plug in a notification into these branches, and we also have to update them. We also have to update the variable to n there, because remember, the job completion status would be succeeded warning or error. Job completion status would be succeeded warning or error, and only when the job completes, the completion status would be one among these three. So which means, yes, we need to send out a relevant email notification, and we also have to set this variable to n so that it doesn't loop through it again, because the job has completed. We attempted to import a journal. It might have succeeded, and a warning or error, we would be sending out relevant email notification, and then we mark this variable as n. So before we come to the notification, let's mark this variable as n first of all, because the job has completed. And to update a variable to n, we need to use assign action. And I would say update EasySS job still running variable to n. And I'm going to select that variable, EasySS job still running. I'm setting it to n here. I'm going to repeat the same thing in these two branches as well. We just have to use assign action. I say update is ESS job still running to n. Remember, you cannot have two nodes in the integration with the same name, guys. So since I've already used this name here, I would just have to put one at the end to make it unique. And I'm going to set this value to n. Update is ESS job still running to n2. So from all the three branches, we're just setting the variable to n, so that what would happen is, yes, based on our job completion status, we're going to send out a relevant email notification, and we are marking it as n. Since we are marking it as n, it comes out of the while loop. Now, when you add an email notification, how do you do it, guys? You just have to search for notification tab and add it in. Now, when you add a notification, guys, remember you need to mention when you send out an email to anyone, what are the details that we normally have, guys? You have from two email address, CC and BCC. You have from email address, subject, body, and attachments. So these are the things that we normally configure. And one obvious thing you could do was, you can go ahead and hardcode the email IDs here. Say, for example, if John is looking after GL today, I can put his email ID. And if Tim is from integration team, I can also put his email ID. And I can hardcode the from and to email IDs as well. In the case of to email ID also, I can hardcode the value. But is there any problem with this, guys? Hardcoding the email IDs in the notification. What's the downside with that?
Maybe tomorrow John and Tim may change the team and may leave the organization.
Correct. Somebody else might replace them, right? So in such cases, we will have to, somebody has to bring down the service and change the email IDs. Certainly not a best practice. And let me also rename this to success notification. So what's the other option that we have, guys? The other option that we have is, instead of hardcoding the email IDs here, you can go ahead and create a lookup, store the email IDs in there, and then pick up the email IDs from that lookup. Exactly similar to what you have done in a data access set. I'm going to create a lookup, and I'll give a name as GL access sets lookup. Sorry, not GL access sets. I'm going to call it as common properties lookup. And I'm going to have a pretty generic column headings here, property name and property value, so that I can store any value in these two columns. So that I can store any value in these columns. Okay. Now, what exactly do we want to store? We want to have two email properties here. So one property to store the from email address, and I'm going to add another property to store the to email address. Remember, guys, in the case of to email address, since the to email address can change from one integration to another integration, remember GL team could be different from AR team, right? So to email address cannot be generic one. It has to be by integration. So you have two email address, and you can mention the specific email address on which you want to receive email notifications. So I'm plugging in a Gmail ID here, which I use to monitor email notifications from OIC. But here you can, this is where you mention the email address of a GL team and the integration support team. You can have comma separated list of values. You can have comma separated list of values. And you can also have distribution lists as well. So if your client has created a distribution list like this, so you can also add distribution lists as well. Okay, comma separated list of emails can be individual emails or can be distribution lists. All of them are supported. Okay, and remember why did we use GL journal in the to email property? Because if it is a AR invoice email, so if it is AR invoices to email, it could be a different email. Okay, since the AR team can be different from our GL team, we want to have the business object name also in the to email property, but we don't need this. And in the case of to email, plain and simple, you just need to mention who is supposed to receive the email notification for journals. Okay, so is it going to be GL team or a support team? So you just have to mention the email IDs here as a comma separated list. In the case of from email address base, where can you get the from email address from? So this from email address that you see, right? You can get it from OIC instance itself. So if you go into OIC settings, let me show you where those from email address are configured. So if you go into OIC instance, go into settings, notifications. Here we have an option to add email addresses as a senders. So if you want to send an email ID, so if you want to send the emails from OIC from a specific email address, like say _reply @hsbc.com or @oracle.com. So if you want to send out an email, emails from or whatever email address that you want to use as a sender, meaning and as a from email address, you need to configure it here. But to configure this email address, we also need to have OCI consultant configuring SPF and a domain keys, guys. So we don't have OCI consultant to help us with an email address configuration here. Okay, so we don't do it. Usually the OCI admin would do it. So since there is no email address that is configured, in fact, we don't have to create one. OIC instance by default will give you one from email address. Okay, OIC by default would give you from email address, and that from email address you can use. So this email address itself you can use as a from email. This email address itself I can use as a from email address. So I can just copy that, and that is exactly what I'm hard coding here. Not hard coding, entering in a lookup. So I've created a lookup capturing the from and to email address, and I need to get the from and to email address from that lookup. How do we do it? We go into functions, integration, lookup value function. You know very well how a lookup works, right? Pick up common properties lookup. Copy the no reply from email property. Sorry, journal to email property. And there's no default value. So I'm just saying, I'm asking OIC to go to this lookup, search in property name column. for this particular value, I'm going to hard code this value here. Okay. Search for GL journal to email property in this lookup and get the property value. And we need to repeat the same thing from email as well. So from email also, we need to repeat the same. It's just that instead of getting a to email property, we're going to get the from email property here. So I'm getting a from and to email IDs from a lookup, so that even tomorrow if people change, if either the from or to email address change, we don't have to touch the service. We just have to go to the lookup and update the email IDs here. So even the client business user also would be able to help themselves. And what's the subject that we need to mention? Now I've given you the HTML files in the notification here. If you go to OIC material folder, I've given the notification HTML files. You see the success notification HTML, fault notification, and warning notification HTML files. Open the success notification HTML. Open the success notification HTML. And this is exactly what we need to. So we've already we were already pulling the from and to email address from a lookup. That is fine. So what exactly do I want to use as a subject, guys? I want to mention a subject saying that journals imported successfully for batch name, and I also want to print the batch name here from the reference. So you go out and see if that is throwing any error. If you get any reference error, you will be able to change it, or you can change the reference of the batch name and you can map it to this. You can map it to this, or if you want to avoid confusion, you can also take this one. So you take out the batch name and you can pull the batch name from here. And this way you can print a message saying that journals imported successfully for batch name. And again, in the case of email body here, just read that message, guys. So it's a very well defined message. What it says is, yes, we need to enter email body here. It can be a plain text, meaning I can just say, hi user, journals imported successfully. So I can print a plain text message like this. But what's the problem with plain text message, guys? We cannot send out a neat and properly formatted message in plain text. But if you use HTML, you can send a neat and properly formatted message in HTML, which is not possible in plain text. And within the email body, we can also print the parameters as well. Okay, I will tell you where the parameters would come handy. Remember, if you want to print some values from the integration in the email body, like say, for example, if you want to include the instance ID or the request ID of the import journals shop, you can put that within the curly braces as you see here. So if you want to print some parameters here, you need to mention it in curly braces and you need to define them here and assign values to it. So before the notification is sent out, whatever parameters are defined here, the values assigned to it, expressions assigned to it would be evaluated and they would be put into the body as well. So we're not going to use plain text here. Instead, we use a HTML content. Now you might say, Prasad, I don't know HTML. Is that going to be a problem? Absolutely nothing to worry. I'm going to give you a basics of HTML now. And remember these HTML files that I've shared with you, right? So these files, these are the ones that I've created for in one of the projects that I've done. And I've been using the same HTML files in every other project that I do. It's just that you can make some changes if required as per your client requirement. Now, what are the basics of HTML? Guys, you have two sections in it. You have a header and a body section. Body is a core section. This is where you have the actual payload, actual message mentioned. And what are we saying here, guys? We're saying, dear user, journals imported successfully in ERP Cloud. we're printing this line. And we're also saying, please find below details. We're saying, please find below details. We're printing the process name, import journals, instance ID, ESS job ID, and the job status. Okay. Just give me one moment, guys. So what's the message that we are printing? Dear user, journals imported successfully in ERP Cloud. Please find below details. And we are printing a process name as import journals, instance ID, ESS job ID, instance ID, because if somebody wants to track the batch in OIC, they would be making use of instance ID. And if we get an error, then we use the request ID. Sorry, not an error. We will also print the request ID as well of the import journals job. And we would also print the ESS job status. We would also print the ESS job status. So whenever we send out an email, what are the three things that we need to do? We normally include references from OIC. So just in case client wants to or support team wants to search for the request in OIC, they can do so with the help of instance ID. And we will also print the references from Fusion Cloud so that if client wants to search for the request in ERP Cloud, they'll be able to do so with the help of the CSS job ID. And for the reference purpose, we will also print the job status as well. And also, we are printing one line here as a postscript line. We are saying, or not the postscript, the postscript line. We are also printing one more line with an OIC hyperlink. So we're saying you can access OIC, and we want to print the OIC instance link as a hyperlink here. We want to print the OIC instance link as a hyperlink here, as a hyperlink. And the reason is if client wants to log into OIC instance immediately, maybe from the email itself, we are printing the OIC instance link as a URL. So if you see this, right, so the notification is going to look something like this. So the OIC instance URL will be printed as a hyperlink, and when you click on it, we want to take the user to a OIC instance URL. Okay. And in the last line, we are saying that this is an auto-generated notification from OIC. Don't reply to this. This is an auto-generated notification from OIC. Don't reply to this. Now, if you look at this body, you are using HTML tags in it. Now you have a tag called P, which stands for paragraph. So whatever you print in here would be printed as a paragraph. You also have a span element, which is nothing but a section of text, And we also have, we are also printing one more line saying, please find below details. And we are printing the labels here, like process name, instance ID, ESS job ID, and ESS job status. So we're printing the labels, and these labels, we are printing it in bold. So if you put something in B, if you put something in B tag, it gets printed in bold. And you also see a BR tag in here. What does a BR tag means, guys? BR means a line break. Okay, so we are printing this paragraph, a section of text, line breaks in between. Please find below details, and we are printing these labels in bold. And these are mentioned as a parameters, and we're going to define them as parameters and assign values to them. And the last line, you see this one, when you want to print hyperlink in HTML, we need to use an anchor tag, and that's exactly what we are using here. We're using an anchor tag and with a href element in it. Okay, now this is a HTML content I want to use. Now, you have this paragraph tag, you have a span element, and you have other HTML tags in it, right? How exactly you want to print those messages, how exactly you want to style that message is what you print in a header here. How exactly you want to print this message is what you mention in a styling information. So here I have, you see that we have a p tag, and in the paragraph tag, what is it that we are mentioning? We're saying font family as Arial, and we are mentioning the font size as 13. Similarly, you're also mentioning a span tag here, font family as Arial, and you have a font size of 12. So which means that's why if you see the first line is printed in a slightly bigger size, and when compared to the second line, because the first line is using a paragraph element, and paragraph has a pixel size of 13. And the second line is a span element, which has a pixel size of 12. And you basically mention for each HTML tag, you mention the styling information here. And this styling information is going to control, how exactly the message should be printed. Okay. Now, what is it that we're going to do? We will copy this entire HTML content. I'm going to put it in here. And we need to define the parameters. What are the parameters that we need to define? So whatever are parameters that you see here, we need to define them. Instance ID. So whenever, say for example, once we receive a batch from core banking system, to process that batch, this integration will be triggered, right? And there would be an instance ID generated. That instance ID is what we want to print. Where can we get the instance ID from, guys? Remember, in the old versions of OIC instance, what we used to do was we used to do a function called getFlowID. We used to use a function called get. We used to do this function call to get the instance ID. And remember, guys, this would still work. It still works. But we don't need to make function call anymore, guys, because this instance ID is readily available for us. Some of the information about the integration, which is called as integration metadata, would already be available for you under self. Integration metadata is already available under self. Now, if you go into runtime, you see that there is an instance ID available there. So I'm going to just print that instance ID here. And what else we need? We need ESS job ID. And where do you get the ESS job ID from, guys? So here we are submitting a request to submit import journals job. We're sending a request here, and we're getting a response here. And in the response, what do you see? You see that there is a result attribute. This result is nothing but a request ID. And we also need ESS job status. We also need ESS job status. And where do we get the job status from there? So if you call this get ESS job status, okay, so this is exactly what you need to do. So I'm picking up a job status from a get ESS job status response. Now what else we need, guys? We also need the URL as well, right? Define a URL. Where do you get the URL from, guys? If you go into self metadata tag here, there is a environment details available. And in the environment details, you have a base URL. So I can directly make use of this property. Base URL. But the problem with this base URL is, remember guys, when I shared the OIC instance link with you, how did I share the OIC instance link, guys? So that when you access OIC instance, you need to mention the OIC instance hostname /IC/home. So this is exactly what you need to mention. But the base URL that you get, have, right? It only has the URL. It only has the URL till.com. Guys. So the base URL that you have here, so this property only has a value till.com. And to that URL, I need to concatenate /home and /IC, because you cannot try to access OIC instance URL. You cannot access OIC instance with just the host name, guys. It's not going to work out. I think it's probably getting redirected, I believe. And let me try to open it in a session where I have not logged in. If that works, we can probably leave it that way. Yeah, it's getting redirected, I believe. So let's do it this way, guys. We would just go ahead and print the base URL itself. wherein you have OIC hostname itself. I'll print that as a URL. Now you go ahead and save this. So we configure the success notification. Unfortunately, we only have a cut and paste option, guys. See, I want to configure a notification in the warning branch as well, at least one more branch so that we can test it. But I can only do a cut and paste. I cannot copy and paste it. Copy and paste would have been much better, but I cannot. If I cut it, I'll have to create a notification here. So let's go ahead and add a notification in the warning as well. And I'm going to configure this real quick without the running commentary. Now you guys need to help me with this. Where do I get the from and to email IDs, guys? First of all,
Lookup.
Okay, let me go there. Which function do I need to use? Lookup value function. Common properties lookup. Copy the to email property and replace it, right? And how about the from email address? Same story?
Same.
Subject, what do we say here in the subject? Well, change the subject notification. It's warning, not error. We'll say warning. So we'll say that import journals ESS job completed in warning for batch name, and we print the batch name there. And for batch name again, we can take out the reference. And we print it here. And in the case of email body, so this time, yes, it's going to be a different message, guys. We say that import journals ESS job ended in warning in ERP cloud. Okay, so we're just saying that import journals ended in warning in ERP cloud. We still print the same details. And we also print the OIC instance URL as well. And what are the parameters that we need to configure? There's the same parameters that we have earlier. Instance ID. Where do I get it from? Instance ID?
Self metadata.
Okay. Drag it here. Now, what's the second parameter I need? ESS job ID. Where can I pick up the ESS job ID from?
Submit response.
Yes. ESS job status. Get ESS job status, right?
Base URL.
Tell me one thing is when a import journals job ends in warning or error, is there a chance that client might ask you to pull the attachment and get the import journal job log files and add it as an attachment, guys? There is a chance that they might ask you to do it, right? Because since the job has ended in error, if you attach a log and output files generated by that particular job submitted in ERP cloud, and if you could send it as an attachment, it would help. So what can we do to achieve that? So we need to understand if there is any web service that can help us get the log and output files if we have a request ID. Let's see if we have any such service available, guys. So if you look at ERP integration service itself, if you look at ERP integration service itself, here you see that there is a download ESS job execution details operation. And this operation would take in request ID as input. And you can also pass in file type as input. And if you pass the file type as log, it would download only the log files. If you pass it as out, it would download only the output files. If you pass it as all, it would download both the log and output files. So this operation in ERP integration service would expect you to pass in request ID plus the file type. If you leave it blank, both the log and output files will be fetched. Not only by that request ID of that request ID, it would also get the child job record, child job log files as well. So I need to make use of this operation here to get the log and output files, and we will add it as an attachment. Okay, so I'm going to say download ESS job execution details. Send the request ID. Don't pass in any file type, so that what would happen for this request ID as well as all the child jobs of this request ID, the log files and the output files will be fetched. And what exactly do we want to do? We want to get the response of this request has the zip file as input, and we need to add it as an attachment here on the warning notification. So you go into warning notification, you add an attachment here. And one important point, guys, as an attachment, you can only add a file reference as an attachment here. But if you look at the response of download ESS job execution details, you see here we are sending out a request and you get back a response. And in the response of download ESS job execution details, you have a content here. But remember the data type of this content, guys, it is basically a base 64 output. Now, what exactly base 64 means, guys? It is nothing but a string representation of a file content. Now, how does that base 64 output looks like, and how can we convert a base 64 to the actual file content? We'll see that in the outbound flow integration. Okay, so we'll discuss more about the base 64 format in outbound flow. But for now, the output type that you get, the content that you get here would be a base 64 string. I cannot map it as is here, because as an attachment, I can only pass in file reference as an attachment. So to convert this file reference into base 64, I need to use this particular function. I need to use this function called decode base 64 to file reference. And this function, what is it going to do, guys? This function is going to take in base 64 string as input. This function is going to take in base 64 string as input. And it is going to decode the base 64 string and give you a file reference. First of all, as an attachment, you can only attach a file reference. But the output that we have got back from the download ESS job execution details operation is in base 64 format. So I'm converting that base 64 into reference using this standard function. And that is what I'm sending out as an attachment. And one important point, guys, when you send an attachment here, we cannot mention the name with which that attachment needs to go. So with whatever name the zip file is downloaded from ERP, with that name itself, the attachment will go in the email. Now let's go ahead and do the unit testing, guys. The integration is in draft status. I would use patch name as a first tracking identifier, ledger ID as a second one, and accounting period as a third one. I'm going to save it. And just one important point, guys, before I test this, I need to go ahead and check what is the connection that we have in ERP, guys. ET80 instance is not working, guys. It's not working anymore. Let's go ahead and use a different instance. In ESCV, the jobs are erroring out. So let me go ahead and use EUBU. First of all, let me see if this works or not. Well, it seems to be working. And while that connection is getting tested, we would also go ahead and update the journal import trigger connection as well. This one also we will come into EUDU instance. I'll go ahead and refresh metadata so that whatever changes you have done would get reflected. Let's wait for this connection to go through, guys. It's tested successfully. I'm going to save the connection. And I'll also keep a couple of screens open here. First of all, I'll go to the schedule process screen and keep it open because I want to show you the jobs getting submitted there. And we would also have a journal screen open so that we can validate the journals created. Manage journals. Now, once this connection is tested, what do we do, guys? We will just activate the integration and we will load that integration into SOAP UI and we will test it. I'm activating the integration as with a place level as debug. And what did we mention as a security policy in the journal import trigger connection? Guys, it is basic auth. So when we trigger this integration, the journal import service, we have to mention it as basic auth. And once it is active, we would have the WSDL URL generated. And remember, if it is a SOAP service, we cannot test it within OIC instance, right? So we get a WSDL URL. We go to SOAP UI and we create a new project phase. I say UG63 journal import. And I click on OK. And I'm also going to pick up the sample payload from here, from the journal input service folder. So we go to the sample request payload. You can see 4000 here. Let me go ahead and use the same payload, guys. 4001, that's fine. I'll copy the interface rows. I'll copy the interface rows from the start tag to the end tag here. And since I'm trying to trigger an integration built and deployed in this OIC instance, we need to add authorization details. I'm just pasting the password here. Since I'm trying to invoke custom journal import service built and deployed in OIC instance, I'm passing in OIC credentials here. And when we try to, so this is like HSBC trying to trigger our integration, journal import service passing in a couple of journal lines. Since we don't have HSBC system, we're trying to mimic it by triggering a service from a SOAP UI testing tool. Now, the moment you fire off a request, what would happen? Remember, we have created this as an asynchronous service, right? Meaning you only get back a response time. You only get back a response time. There won't be any response here. Okay, you only get back a response time. So, and but if you see in OIC, the request would have reached OIC instance. If you go into OIC monitoring section, you should be able to see a request there. You see request reached OIC and it is in progress at the moment for 4001. Yes, with the payload that you passed in, it triggered the journal import service. It submitted a job and it is waiting at this node. Wait 1 minute node. Now, if you go into Fusion Cloud application, you should be able to see the import journals job getting submitted here. You should be able to see the import journals job submitted here. Import journals job is submitted. It has kicked off a child job, and the child job would have created a journal in ERP Cloud. Now, if you go into child job, where do we see the job creation details, guys? What batch was created? We need to look at the output file of a child job. That gives us a batch details. So if I go into the text file here, if I go into the journal import execution report, you see 4001 batch, it is successful. So I just have to copy this journal batch and I have to paste it in here. Remember one important point, guys, which ledger are we using, guys, as an example?
US primary.
US primary ledger, right? Yeah, so let's select that. And after that, we need to search for the batch. Because if you search in a different journal, you do everything right, but you might get confused, why exactly we're not seeing the seeing the journal batch. So let's change it. US primary ledger. That is not letting me change the ledger. Let me try to do it from a different browser. Here we will change the ledger here to US primary ledger. Let's see if that works now. Not really sure why it's not letting us change it, guys. Instead of worrying about it, what we do was, well, I have to repeat the same thing again. Every instance is throwing different issues, how it is. Let me see if ESEC instance is up and running. Or let me just check if ESEV is up and running. Just want to check first of all if import journal's job is completing in success or not. And if it completes in success, I also want to do one more check whether it is letting me go into a US primary ledger as well. It's going into retrying mode, so that means you have that issue. Let me try it in the third one. I'm trying out a third instance here. Let me just check if we can change the instance for the data access set. So here also we are seeing, is this the one we used earlier, guys, or is it EUDU that we used? We had the same issue in EUDU, right?
EUD we are not used it.
EUDU is the newest.
No,
EUDU
also,
we are used.
EUDU also has the same problem, right? Okay, which means someone has not screwed up one instance, they screwed up all the instances, because you're seeing the same data access set here and there as well. This is exactly what we tried, right? In the first instance. Now let me change it to US primary ledger here. Okay, at least in ESCC, it is letting me change it, right? In ESCC. So we'll go ahead and let me check in EUDU as well. Okay, it's not letting me change it. So we'll change it to ESCC and we'll test it. I'm just updating the journal input connection as well. I'll go ahead and deactivate and reactivate it. It's activated. And I'm going to, yeah, I would also use the same. I use the same payload, no change at all. I'll fire off a request. So we get back a response time again. And you should be able to see an instance created in OIC. Let's track it. And you see this instance is in progress at the moment. It is waiting at the wait node. So if I go into ESCC instance, we should be able to see the jobs running here. You could see that import journals jail job has succeeded. So which means it would have created a journal in the Fusion Cloud application. So I've opened up the journal import execution report. So we could see the journal created in ERP Cloud. I go into journal screen. I'm in US primary ledger and I'm searching for that journal batch here. So we could see that the journal is created. First of all, yes, our journal creation was successful. So you see one batch was created with one journal in it. And within a journal, you have 2 lines. And on every line, you have a code combination. On every line, you have a code combination and you have a debit and credit amounts. So if you look at the integration, it also would have completed successfully. And if you scroll to the right, you would also see into what branch it has gone into since the job completed in succeeded state. So what exactly has happened, guys? So we triggered this integration passing in 2 lines. Journal import service is called. 2 lines inserted to interface table. Import journals job submitted in ERP Cloud. We created a variable marked it as called ESS job still running, marked it as Y. And we checked if it is Y here. So it entered a while loop. It waited for 1 minute. And we try to get the ESS job status. By the time 1 minute is done, the ESS job completed, import journals job, and we've got back the completion status as succeeded. Because you see what is the job completion status here, guys? It has completed in succeeded state. You might see it in init caps here, but when you get the response back, it will be in all capital letters. So we check that if it is a succeeded, and yes, if that is the case, we are sending out a success notification. I'll show you this notification in a moment. And since the job has completed, journal is imported, we have sent out a notification as well. We just want to come out of this loop, right? So we are just updating the variable to N. That is ESS job still running? No, sorry, boss, it is already completed. So we are marking it as N so that it comes out of a while loop. Okay. So let me just show you the email as well that I have received. So you see, this is an email that I have received. Journals imported successfully for batch name 4001. So right from the batch itself, right from the subject itself, we know what batch they're talking about, and we also have this. I mean, we mentioned the dear user journals imported successfully in ERP Cloud, and we say please find below details, and we print the journal details here. We say import journals instance ID, and we also mention the ESS job ID and the job status. Okay, we mentioned the job status. And what else do we need to do? We also need to mention the OIC instance URL as a base URL key. Okay, and if they want to click on it, sorry, this is not the latest one. This is the latest one. So that was received earlier. Now, if you look at this email, what is it that we have here, guys? So we have so if I just show you this email. So we basically use the same batch name, right? So that is why even the subject was same. So the email would say, yeah, this is an email here. Journals imported successfully for batch name 4001. This is an email subject. This is an email subject. And it says journals imported successfully in ERP Cloud. And we see the instance ID. What is the instance ID created in ERP to process this batch, guys? For 4001, it ends with WXQ. And that is exactly what you see here. And what is the job triggered in ERP Cloud to process this journal? It ends with 309. That's a job that you see here. And you also see the job completion status as well. And you also see that there is a URL, OIC instance URL printed as a hyperlink here. And if I click on this, what would happen? The OIC instance link will open up. And since I'm already signed in, I'm getting into OIC instance straight away. Otherwise, it would have taken me to a login page. And as a last line, in the last line, what is it that we are printing? We're saying that this is an auto-generated notification from OIC service. Don't reply to this. And you see this, you cannot send neat and properly formatted emails like this, guys. You cannot print labels in bold and URLs. So all this is not possible if you use a plain text. And that's precisely why we have used HTML content. That's precisely why we have used HTML content. Now, whenever you build integrations like this, guys, at least you need to test a couple of branches to make sure that they work as expected. Now let's test the warning branch as well. When does the integration go into warning branch, guys? When does it go into warning branch? When import journals job ends in, no, when the request ends in warning.
Failed, yeah.
So what I can do, so I can deliberately make the request fail and go into warning state. How can I do it? So you see that we are passing in a code combination at the line level, right? So what I do is I'll change the account value to an invalid one. So you see 1592. There are only two values which are valid per account, which starts with 1592 and 5. But if I make it 15921, is this a valid value, guys? This is not a valid one, right? So if I have to make a job end in warning, I just have to make one small change in the entire payload. So all I have to do is change the account number to 15921. So let me change the batch identifier. I'll do a replace all. And I'll change this to 15921. And I'll change this to 15921. So you pick up the interface rows, copy this, go back into SOAP UI, and paste this in. You fire off a request. You should be able to track the request now. And what's the behavior that you should see now? Yes, you should see a request triggered here. 4002, it is in progress at the moment. And it might be waiting at the wait node. Wait 1 minute. And if you go into Fusion Cloud application, you should be able to see the job completing in warning state. So you see the import journals state job, it completed in warning. And why did the import journals job complete in warning state? Why did it complete in warning state? Because
it did not find the account.
Yeah, it did not find the account. If you go ahead and look at the output, look at the text file of import journals change job, because that has the complete details, right? What does it say? This time this batch has errored out. And under batches created, you don't see any batch in there. So which means journal batch is not created. And if you scroll down, you also see that for account segment, this value was invalid. So into what branch integration should have gone now, guys? It should have gone into a warning branch. And in the warning branch, what is it that we are doing? Yes, we are sending a notification, but to that notification, we are also attaching a log and output files, right? So let's see how that looks like. We'll just wrap up the session in 2 minutes, guys. Now, if you see that this is an email that we have received 4002 import journals, ESS job completed in warning, you see all the details printed, process name, instance ID, ESS job ID, status, and we also see an attachment. Remember I said what I said about attachment, we cannot rename it. It goes with an auto-generated name that we receive from ERP Cloud. So if I just go ahead and add a .zip extension to it, and if I extract it, what is it that I get to see, guys? I would get to see the log and output files. Remember, this is a job that is submitted, right? Import journals job is submitted, and this job has generated only the log file. And this is a child job of 60, and this job has two files generated, one log file and one output file. So how many files in total, guys? Child job has log and output files, and this job has, the parent job has generated only the log file. So 3 jobs in total needs to be generated. So how many jobs you see here? 3 jobs, right? 60, and this is 61 log file, and this is 61 text file. And if you open the 61 text file, what is it that you get to see? The user gets to see what the problem is. Yes, it is errored out, and it is errored out because of so and so error. Okay. And in tomorrow's session, we will start discussing about fault handling, guys. Any questions, guys, so far? Any questions in what we have covered today? Okay, I'll take it as no. Yes, please.
Prashant, then we will try and test this. So I think you will get abundance of emails.
No, absolutely not a problem. So you will know when you test this, right? You try to enable the tracing level as debug, and if you run into an issue, just look at what is the node erroring out and what is the payload passed as input to it. And one recommendation is when some node errors out, right? Just open my integration in another session in another browser and compare the mappings I have done with your mappings. Since this is a first complex integration, right? Yes, certainly there is a fair chance that it might error out, but that's okay. That's how you learn it. But I'll be there to help. No worry. Any questions, guys?
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.